Representative Kessler.
Are you looking for an apology the other day?
I just want to recognize you for bringing candy today, and
Yeah,
also
my phone went off again the other day right when we came out of executive session, so yeah, I apologize for that.
I would also
Actually, I blame the guy that called me, but
yeah. I also want to suggest that you hold on to the rest of that bag because we have a week and a day left of committee. You're batting about 1,000. All right. Did you just?
That's pretty funny.
Okay. Testify before committee. We're doing that, Mike. I've got you testifying, you and Ryan Vincent, or is that a different day? It's not today. Got it. All right. My apologies. All right. We're here to hear HB 2308. And with a description on the, we're going to open that hearing with a description on the bill. Reviser Reimer.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. HB 2308 is an economic development, a new program brought to you by the Department of Commerce. It establishes the Aviation and Innovative Manufacturing in Kansas Economic Development Program, and it's administered by the Secretary of Commerce. The intent of this program is to attract, primarily to attract businesses engaged in electric or hydrogen-powered vehicle production or aircraft assembly to Kansas, and encourage the development of Kansas-based suppliers for those industries. In addition, any business that would want to establish a headquarters in the state may also be eligible for incentives. The qualified activities for purposes of the program are defined in Section 1, which lays out all the definitions that you'll see throughout the bill. The incentives available under this program for a qualified company, qualified by the Secretary, include a refundable tax credit based on a percentage of the amount of the investment, retention of a percentage of payroll tax, reimbursement of employee training and education expenses, a sales tax exemption for construction costs for establishing a qualified facility, and a new Kansas First benefit offered to incentivize procurement by the company from Kansas suppliers. Requirements for incentive eligibility include an agreement to complete the project within 5 years, employment of at least 250 new employees within 5 years of the commencement of commercial operations, and starting wages must be at least 100% of the median wage of the county where the employees work. That is the qualified facility. Retention of employment of those employees for 10 years after the commencement of commercial operations. And for a company that intends to engage in electric or hydrogen-powered vehicle production, or aircraft assembly, there is a minimum investment requirement of $250 million. That investment must be made within 5 years, and commercial operations must commence within 5 years of a date specified in the agreement with the Secretary. There is no minimum investment requirement for other types of applications, like for a headquarters. Companies must agree to repayment of benefits associated with a term or condition of the agreement with the Secretary. If that term or condition is breached, all benefits must be repaid for a failure to make the minimum investment if required within 5 years, or if the project is abandoned, and there's actually a definition of abandoned in Section 1, within the term of the agreement with the Secretary. There are specific clawback provisions that are based on percentages. They require repayment of benefits based on the percentage of the shortfall for a failure to invest, at least 90% of the agreed investment, if the minimum investment is made, if that's required, or a failure to meet at least 90% of the minimum new employment 10-year maintenance requirement. The Secretary is required to review companies to ensure compliance. Secretary must also certify annually to the Secretary of Revenue that the company remains eligible for benefits. Company must make its books and records available for inspection by the Secretary. Confidential information acquired by the Secretary from the company in the course of ensuring compliance is not subject to the Open Records Act, so there's an exception that's set out there. If requested by the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of Revenue shall audit a company or a third party, if applicable, for compliance with the Act. And companies that receive a tax credit under the program must report certain information annually to the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of Revenue. So turning to Section 3 of the Act, that's at page 10, that outlines the tax credit, the investment tax credit that this program provides. This credit would be applicable for income tax, premium tax, or privilege fees, and also the privilege tax on financial institutions. It's earned each taxable year based on up to 10% of the amount of the investment made in that taxable year. For projects, and that's the Secretary's discretion, up to 10%. For projects located outside of a metropolitan county, the amount of the credit is set at 10% of the investment made in the taxable year. The way this investment credit works is it is not claimed in the year that it's earned, but it's divided into at least 5 equal portions and then claimed in the next successive taxable years. It is a refundable credit, so it's refundable each year that it's claimed in those 5 successive years. The Secretary of Commerce must certify that the company is eligible to receive the credit to the Secretary of Revenue before the credit is issued, and the company is required to provide certain information as part of the tax return in which the credit is claimed. Section 4 deals with the incentive that pertains to retention of the Kansas payroll withholding taxes. And the bill provides for an incentive of retention of up to 100% of those taxes for wages paid for employees, and the wages have to be at least equal to the county median wage where the business facility is located. And the incentive is available for up to 10 successive taxable years. Then there is that requirement, as mentioned before, of 250 new employees within 5 years. For each year with respect to this incentive, the Secretary of Commerce must certify to the Secretary of Revenue that the company is eligible for the incentive, number of employees, amount of wages paid, percentage of payroll withholding taxes to be retained by the company. And then the company must also provide information to the Secretary of Revenue. Section 5 addresses another incentive of the program, which is the training and education expense reimbursement. So this incentive would provide reimbursement for up to 1 year of such eligible expenses completed by a new employee. And this particular incentive is limited to a maximum total reimbursement amount to a company of $5 million per project. The training has to occur in Kansas at any Kansas community college or technical college as agreed by the respective school, the company, and the Secretary of Commerce. And reimbursement is limited to training and education for the new employees that will establish residency in Kansas by the end of their training period, and that are also employed in Kansas at the company's business facility located and operating in Kansas. The company, again, must demonstrate eligibility annually, including proof of Kansas residency. And Section 6 establishes a fund for the purpose of awards of that incentive. Sections 7 and 10 provide a sales tax exemption for construction or establishment of the qualified facility. Section 8 sets up the Kansas First benefit, and this is kind of a new benefit that provides up to $1 million for every $20 million of procurement of goods or services made in a fiscal year from one or more Kansas companies. So this is an incentive to try and develop that supply chain here in Kansas. The supplier may not be affiliated in any manner with, by ownership or control with the company, with a qualified company, must be conducting business in Kansas, registered with Secretary of State in good standing, and have its principal place of business in Kansas. The way this benefit works is claimed once for a fiscal year. The qualified company is limited to 3 such claims for, in total for the agreement, and made within the term of the agreement. And it's based on procurement made in this fiscal year for which the claim is made, and that claim is to be made at the end of that fiscal year. This incentive is limited to a maximum aggregate amount for a fiscal year for all companies claiming the incentive of $5 million. And then if multiple companies make claims, then there's a procedure for award of the benefit based on the respective amount of the claim. And those awards are also made from a fund that's set up by the bill. There's a provision for annual reports in the bill to the governor, the Senate and House Commerce Committees, and the Senate and House Tax Committees. That report is to include information about the company, economic impact, number of new employees, wages, investments made, amount of benefits provided, estimated net state fiscal impact, estimate of the multiplier effect on the Kansas economy, and any material defaults that have been made by a company. Section 1 defines terms that are used throughout the bill. There are a number of important terms. These include construction, electric motor vehicles defined, facilities defined, headquarters, hydrogen-powered vehicle, metropolitan county, new employee, qualified activities, qualified business facility employee, qualified business facility investment or qualified investment is defined. Qualified company, of course, is defined, and training and education eligible expense for that benefit is also defined. If enacted, the bill would become effective July 1st of 2025. So what the bill does, stand for questions.
Okay, any questions for the reviser? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Other than the Apex, are there any other refundable tax credits in statute?
Reviser Reimer, can you answer that,
I
or
would
do we
have
need
to
to have
check to
research
make
look into it?
Yeah, I'd have to check on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? The payroll rebate, sir, is that, I noticed we define a Kansan, so I'm assuming that the payroll is limited to only people that are actually working at the facility, the payroll refund?
Yes, I believe so. So let me, I can maybe do it when I sit down, but I'll check on that and provide the sites.
Okay. And then you mentioned Open Records Act. What doesn't what are we excluding from the Open Records Act?
So the Secretary is granted authority to review books and records of a qualified company and ensure compliance. And so the exemption exempts confidential information that the Secretary would acquire as part of that compliance assurance process.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And on that note, I did find in there, and I do appreciate that this was included in the bill, that the transparency database, they will be required to report to the transparency database. That's great. Under the Apex, I do believe that there was some notation that this information wouldn't be made available. Is there anything in the bill that I may have missed that would preclude the full scope of incentives being placed and made available to the public?
So, I guess confidential provisions, as we just discussed, would not be available. Other than that, I don't believe so. I mean, there are references to some statutes that currently in our laws that I think have some limits on release of information. But again, it's confidential information that a company would be required to share with either the Secretary of Revenue or the Secretary of Commerce.
But from your understanding from the transparency database, every incentive dollar and the recipient name, just as we have done before, county, recipient, the name, would be required to be disclosed within this bill. There's not another place in here that excludes anything that you know of?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I'll check on that for sure, but I
All right,
don't think
thank you.
No further questions. Charles, you're done. Thanks. We're going to open oral proponents and start with Andrew Nave, Greater Wichita Partnership. Welcome back to committee, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As you referenced, my name is Andrew Nave. I'm the Executive Vice President for Economic Development for the Greater Wichita Partnership. I also have the privilege of being a committee member for the Kansas Economic Development Alliance, which is the state's professional association of economic developers. And you have submitted testimony on both organizations in your packets. I appreciate the committee's time and opportunity to just share maybe a little color and a little kind of boots on the ground perspective as an economic developer. I've worked in this state for the vast majority of my career, almost 20 years in economic development, and almost all of that has been in Kansas, mainly up in the Kansas City area in Johnson County, but also here in Wichita for the last 8 years. And I really see three things that this bill really helps advance our industries, not only aerospace and aviation, but especially manufacturing. The first of which would be getting into, and how the bill speaks to and specifically calls out, advanced cutting-edge industries. Electric, hydrogen, the cutting-edge industries of aerospace is what I think the secret sauce of this bill is. It is not an omnibus, kind of cover all things economic development bill. It is really laser focused on helping us compete as a state for the most cutting-edge industries, especially in the aviation sector. Our part of the state, South Central Kansas, regularly competes, as you would expect us to, for aviation and aerospace projects. And right now, over the last, call it 5 to 10 years, there has been a wave of new innovation, new technological advances in the aviation sector that is, quite frankly, we haven't seen in 50 years. You have electric aircraft, you have hydrogen-powered aircraft, you have vertical takeoff and lift aircraft, you have supersonic, you have hypersonic. All of these have been around, and these are concepts, but in the last decade, they've been advanced. And for South Central Kansas, we have been competing for those investments. But these investments, many times, have gone to other states. Recently, Anduril, which is an electric vertical takeoff and lift defense company, chose Columbus, Ohio for a major investment. Joby, which is another kind of air taxi, vertical takeoff and lift company, chose Dayton, Ohio. Aura Aero, a French company that's electric aircraft, chose Daytona Beach, Florida. Rocket Lab, which is in the space sector, certainly with space being privatized over the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen more investment in space than the previous 50 years by NASA. So that's kind of an exploding, exciting industry sector with space. Wichita and our part of Kansas are wanting to take advantage of that. Rocket Lab just made an announcement of investment in Albuquerque. So you're seeing this industry making these cutting-edge investments. Our opinion and our take is that A&K gives us a tool to match that on a cutting-edge basis because it's looking to incentivize and looking to grow that sector of the economy. The second reason I think this is a good bill is it doesn't just help new companies. Most importantly, it helps our existing companies. We have major aerospace brands in our state, and all of them are doing cutting-edge things. You're seeing Textron Aviation having the best years they've ever had. They're growing rapidly. Their sister company at Textron is Bell Helicopter. Bell is a part of the Valor, the vertical takeoff helicopter that's replacing the Black Hawk helicopter. We have an engineering office for Bell in Wichita now, and they're committing to do manufacturing. That's cutting edge. Bombardier moved their defense headquarters to Wichita. They're doing new things in defense sector. So we have this opportunity in companies that are already in Kansas, that are already established in our state. This tool will help them, encourage them to continue those important investments in our state. And then the last thing I would say is that the beauty of this program is the Kansas First component that spreads across the supply chain really broadens that impact across our state. We have 450 aerospace and aviation companies across Kansas, north to south, east to west, all over our state. A lot of them, 300, 350, are in South Central Kansas, but they're everywhere. This bill, this tool, will broaden that and encourage both our existing major employers, but also new employers to expand their supply chain in Kansas and spread that benefit all across our state. So those are just three of the reasons we think this is a really strong bill. We would highly encourage your support and consideration, especially as it helps us compete for those new cutting-edge industries that we know Kansas can win. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, committee, any questions for Mr. Nave? Seeing none, thank you very much. Before we move on, I think Mike Ditch has a couple answers for us.
Mike Ditch, Legislative Research, to answer the question on refundable tax credits. Start at the top here. Apex is refundable based on the agreement. There's also the Child Daycare Assistance Credit, Community Service Contribution Credit, Disabled Access Credit for certain individuals, Earned Income Credit, Individual Development Account Credit, Small Employer Health Benefit Plan Credit, Telecommunications and Railroad Credit.
Okay, thank you very much. Representative Williams, need anything else?
Mr. Chair, thank you. No, but that would be really great information that Rachel could provide us the total amount, the fiscal note for those refundable tax credits annually.
Thank you. Representative Poskin, did you have a question for the reviser before we move on?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't form my question fast enough. On page, on the memorandum, it says that starting wages must be at least 100% of the median wage of the county where the employees work. And my question is that job specific, or is it, I just looked up the median wage in Sedgwick and it's like 21 something per hour. Does that mean janitors would need to be at the county median wage across the board, or is it career specific?
Reviser Reimer.
So there's nothing specific in the bill. The bill just references the county median wage. And I'll check the language to be sure. But I think that would be something, though, that the secretary and the company could specify in their agreement. So if the secretary wanted a higher wage or a specific wage for certain professions, and that's something that they could hash out in their agreement.
All right, thank you.
All right, so I was kind of thinking along the same lines. Is that the whole payroll merged together and then averaged out for the median, or is it the lowest paid person has to be at the median? Is that something research could look into? Okay, we'll get that answer for you.
Mr. Chair, that's kind of exactly what I was thinking as well.
Okay, moving on. Sorry for the interruption there. Sam Sackett, Spirit Aero Systems, you're up. Welcome to Commerce Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for not only holding this hearing today on this bill, but for the leadership that you, Mr. Chairman, and others on this committee have shown on behalf of the aviation industry. It's a privilege to be part of the industry, and it's amazing to have such support from you and from members of this committee in this body. So we appreciate that. My name is Sam Sackett. I'm here on behalf of Spirit Aero Systems, and I'm also here today on behalf of our supply chain. So while we have about 12,000 employees, direct employees here in Kansas, we also have hundreds of suppliers that operate throughout the state, providing services and parts and components that go on to the large aircraft components that we then assemble and provide to our customers, both on the commercial side and on the defense side. I'm not here to take up a lot of time. I just want to say that we are very supportive of this proposal. As part of the aerospace industry, we do have a lot of other states, other countries that want the work that we have here in Kansas. And as those other states compete for new work and for us to even move work out of state to those locations, having incentives in place where businesses have to make the decision on what to do with those work packages, certainly something like this proposal would give the state of Kansas a more competitive edge in competing for those types of work packages. And I'm not just thinking about again, like us as the largest private sector employer in the state, but I'm also thinking about the smaller machine shops, right? The smaller businesses that are part of the industry that are so integral to what we do every day. We can't survive as a big company without all of the supply chain that provide the components. And we think that this bill, by improving some of the incentive packages that the state is able to put forward, would really help the supply chain that has struggled over the last 5 years to be in a more competitive position when they are ready to make big job commitments, big capital investment commitments. And so really that's my message, Mr. Chairman, is we're here to support this bill. We don't have anything to announce today that would be applicable to this, but we think looking forward in all the challenges that we have right now, there are a lot of opportunities ahead of us, and there are a lot of economic opportunities. And we are excited for the future and excited for the future of from the base, from all the suppliers as well, and thinking about all the opportunities to grow jobs here in Kansas. So as you think about this proposal and the opportunities that presents, remember not just the big companies like us, but remember the small businesses as well that make up this great industry here in Kansas. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Committee, any questions for Mr. Sackett? So I just have one that's kind of been bugging me about this bill. Your company in particular went out of your way to bring jobs back to Kansas after we helped you with the aviation tax credit. And after all you've done and all your loyalty to the state of Kansas, would you be concerned that this bill would possibly bring a new company to town to compete against you directly?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. My thought on that is that as a state, right, we do compete for workers within industry, right? Like at our company, we try to attract the best and the brightest. We recognize that other aviation companies in our region are all doing the same thing, and our suppliers are doing the same thing. I have the belief that by attracting more businesses to the state of Kansas who want to invest capital and want to hire workers, whether they are bringing workers in from out of state to relocate here, or they're hiring existing Kansans to do those high-tech jobs, we all win in the end, because when those new workers are hired or brought in from out of state, that helps increase the population here. Those workers usually have spouses and families, and so we increase the pool of workers that we have to pull from. And so I think that competition is a good thing, and so by attracting other businesses to add to the aerospace industry's presence here in the state, I think the net effect of that is something positive.
All right, seeing no further questions, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
James Watkins. I think there's a typo on here.
What was it?
James P. Watkins.
James P. Watkins, here on behalf of the Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to be brief. Mr. Nave represents the Greater Wichita Partnership. They're very closely aligned with the Chamber. They do the economic development in our part of the state, and then some of our aviation manufacturers are here. But we did want to be on record in support of this important bill. I've been before this committee many times talking about the importance of our aviation manufacturing sector. And the state of Kansas has benefited immensely over the years. This sounds a little dramatic, but it's true. The aviation manufacturing sector in Kansas has helped win world wars, keep peace around the country. It's also created a significant middle class, upper middle class. These jobs are great jobs. They pay high wages, they have great benefits, they typically have great retirement programs. And because of that, Mr. Chairman, these jobs are sought after, not just in other parts of the United States, but in other parts of the world. because they pay so well, because the benefits are so great. We've seen over the last 30 years other states increasing their aviation manufacturing jobs at a rate much higher than ours in Kansas. And Mr. Chairman, you mentioned the aviation jobs tax credit. That has helped a lot. We were seeing people leave Kansas to go to states like Georgia, the Carolinas, Florida, Texas. We've been able to be more competitive, but the competition is not over. There's still fierce competition for these jobs and for these manufacturers, and we need to be as competitive as we can be, and we think this legislation is a step in that direction. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer questions at the appropriate time.
Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Jason, this may not be appropriate for you, but it's just kind of been stirring around in my head. When we talked about some of the relocations that have taken place, I heard Ohio mentioned twice in a row. Is that I would imagine in economic development circles or chamber circles, you're probably familiar, or someone would be. Was that due to some sort of an incentive program, or was that another factor, like a favorable tax structure or a workforce issue? Whatever it may be.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, it had to have something to do with incentives and tax structure and just overall competitive environment, but that may be a better question for Mr. Nave to answer.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Any further questions? All right, seeing none. Andrew, I saw you nodding your head. Jason, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, yes, absolutely. The other states' economic incentive tools have increased when ours have not. And the state of Ohio has made a concerted effort of pouring money into that. Now, it's unfair to say that Ohio's competitiveness is solely based on economic incentives, and certainly business climate is a factor, particularly in Dayton, Ohio, where Anduril, which is a big defense contractor, probably put the most exciting, cutting-edge vertical takeoff and lift defense platform that was just announced earlier this year. This is the aircraft that's essentially fighting a lot of the war in the Ukraine right now. A lot of that had to do with Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in that part of that state. But much like we have in Wichita, we have McConnell Air Force Base, and we have the National Institute for Aviation Research at Wichita State. So we have the fundamental pieces and the foundation. I think, unfortunately, what we have sometimes, we run into a challenge of we don't have that economic incentive tool to push it over the finish line. So, yeah, I think that's certainly a factor. Yes, sir.
Research, could you get us information on what the state of Ohio has in their toolbox for aviation, please? Thanks, Andrew. Revisor Reimer has an answer to a previous question.
Yeah, I just want to respond to a couple. One is the county median wage question. So there's nothing that I could find in the bill that is more specific than just the median wage of the county where the facility is located. So it could be, it would be based on the median wage in total of that county, and nothing more specific than that. However, there is a provision, for example, in one of the benefit provisions, the payroll withholding tax benefit, that the agreement should establish any county median wage standard for purposes of determining eligibility for the withholding tax benefit. So, as I noted, there's opportunity for the Secretary to establish a higher median wage standard than just the county median wage. I think there was a question regarding Kansas-based employment for the payroll tax. Is that correct?
I just wanted to make sure that they were living and working in Kansas and even at the location.
So there's no, with respect to that particular benefit, there's no specific requirement about that other than, of course, it would be that I could find right now, other than that it would be Kansas payroll taxes. So, it would be wages subject to the Kansas Payroll and Withholding Tax Act. And also, there's a reference to total payroll in the definition section that discusses report that's made to the Secretary of Labor for purposes of unemployment tax. So.
Okay, thank you. Josh Jefferson. Deputy Director, Kansas Department of Commerce.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for having me back again. It's a pleasure to be here today and testify in front of you. My name is Joshua Jefferson. I'm the Deputy Secretary of the Kansas Department of Commerce. Come in front of you today not only as the Deputy Secretary, but also as a pilot, as an airframe and power plant technician, also as somebody who served primarily in a capacity to recruit aerospace and defense projects for the last 10 to 11 years. So a lot of historical background from my perspective that I bring hopefully to the testimony today. I appreciate you allowing me to testify in support of HB 2308, the Aviation Innovative Manufacturing in Kansas Act. This is AIM-K for short. Just to give you a little bit of background, the state of Kansas currently has about 135 active leads in its business recruitment pipeline. And these are recruitment projects that are out of state that we're looking to bring to Kansas, not projects that we're actually helping expand within Kansas. Of which, of these 135 active leads, 59% are manufacturing related. A trend among these projects is a rapid technological development in transportation manufacturing, resulting in new processes that require large investments in new facilities and equipment. Aerospace manufacturing, including emerging aerospace technologies, sustainable aviation fuel, and new vehicle manufacturing are key drivers of these opportunities. The MK bill will create a tool to emphasize that Kansas, and this is emphasis on statewide, is open for business while supporting the air capital of the world and leveraging Wichita State University's status as the #1 aerospace and research development program in the nation. This bill slightly enhances the state's traditional incentive programs of PEAK, HPIP, KIT and KER, and some of the other things that exist. But this will give Kansas a competitive edge to successfully recruit these manufacturers while maintaining strict eligibility requirements, meaningful clawbacks, and really only awarding benefits after companies meet the requirements to create jobs and make investments in Kansas. The AIM-K tool establishes clear eligibility requirements. Some of the qualifications include eligible industries, which are aircraft assembly and vehicle manufacturers, component or subassembly manufacturers, national headquarters, research and development facilities, sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF for short, and then hydrogen production as well. There's a $250 million capital investment for aircraft assembly or vehicle manufacturers, but there is no minimum requirement for the other qualified activities within the bill. At least 250 jobs need to be created within the first 5 years of production start. Base wages of at least 100% or more of the county median wage, and the project needs to be completed within 5 years of the start date. Important note, the projects can be combined in order to meet the program qualifications within. Some of the program benefits include training, no-cost access to any Kansas community college or technical college of the employer's choice for the purpose of supporting training of production workers. This reimbursement component has a $5 million cap per project, up to 12 months of classroom training for each production employee with the curriculum provided by the employer. Payroll tax, up to 100% of project employee payroll withholding retained by the employer for up to 10 years. This is similar to our PEAK program, or Promoting Employment Across Kansas, which currently offers businesses 95% of the project employee payroll withholding tax. On the capital investment tax credit side, up to 10% of the total project capital investment is in a refundable tax credit. There's an automatic 10% if the project locates in a non-MSA area of the state. And this is paid over at least 5 years or more, which I think is important to point out. The Kansas First initiative is something we are really excited about to really push forward. This provides an opportunity for qualified companies that procure at least $20 million in goods or services from one or more unaffiliated Kansas suppliers with fiscal year, and they may receive up to $1 million in additional incentives through the Kansas First initiative. Sales tax exemption, there is an abatement of construction materials sales tax on construction, renovation, or expansion of the qualifying project for the specific purpose of the industries within. This is a common component of our High Performance Incentive Program, or HPIP for short. I did include in the testimony a nice table that gives a kind of a walkthrough of our traditional incentive programs, Apex, and then AIM-K, broken out by category. I think it would be good for us to quickly walk through that. In our traditional incentive programs on the training category, we have KIT and KER, which is Kansas Industrial Training or Industrial Retraining. There's a $1,200 to $2,000 per trainee component. KER requires a dollar-for-dollar match by the company. KIT does not require a match. Apex, on the training side, had a reimbursement of up to $5 million at a 50% rate for 5 years for training. And then AIM-K offers up to $5 million reimbursement for no-cost access to any Kansas community college or technical college of the employer's choice. This is approximately equals out to about 1,860 employees that can benefit through that program. On the payroll tax category, through traditional incentives, PEAK, or promoting employment across Kansas, offers 95% of the payroll tax withholding for up to 7 years. There is a clause within for high-impact projects that create at least 100 new jobs that may be eligible for up to 10 years. Apex offered up to 10% of total payroll costs for 10 years. And then the AIM-K bill offers 100% of payroll withholding tax rebate for 10 years. On the investment tax credit component with HPIP on the traditional side, there's a 10% income tax credit for up to 50%, which may be transferable. Credit that exceeds the transferee's tax liability may be carried forward, which is non-refundable in that manner. Apex offered up to 15% investment tax credit, which is refundable. AIM-K offers up to 10% investment tax credit, which is refundable, unless located in a non-MSA area of the state, then it's fixed at 10%. The Kansas First Initiative doesn't exist as it is today in any of our other incentive programs. The AIM-K establishes that $1 million in additional incentives. And then the sales tax component is pretty equal across all of our incentive programs, including the Apex program as well. There are clawbacks within the AIM-K bill. First is around the committed capital investment. So if a company fails to reach the committed capital investment at project completion, all earned benefits of the program shall be revoked and reimbursed to the state on a sliding scale aligned with the shortfall of what the company did not meet. If the company abandons the project before the incentive agreement expires, all earned benefits of this program shall be revoked and reimbursed to the state of Kansas. And then on the employment side, if employment drops below 90% of the committed jobs at any point after project completion, but not to exceed 15 years from that date, payroll tax and Kansas tax exemption benefits shall be clawed back proportionally. Lastly, the program does have a sunset within. In short, this bill does create a new economic development tool for job creation activity and capital investments made by manufacturers or national headquarters, training partnerships with our community colleges and our technical schools, and a Kansas First priority to encourage procurement from Kansas companies. Overall, this tool will allow the state to continue to capture future investments and build off of established momentum that has been earned from my bipartisan efforts here in Kansas, and really make Kansas the best place in the country to do business in that way. In the back of my testimony, I did have our data and research team put together an ROI, or return on investment study. This study has a few assumptions within around a major aerospace project locating in the Wichita manufacturing area. So from the start, there is a benefit to the state, even in the year one of the benefit program. But ultimately, the big things that are good to be pointed out to this is over a 10-year period, for every dollar spent by the state, there is over a $21 return on investment to the Kansas economy. With that, I will stand for questions.
Okay, committee, any questions? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so I noticed that this was requested for introduction on February 5th by the Department of Commerce, but we still don't have a fiscal note. So if I were to do my math on just the basics, we would have a fiscal note if it was just one company, a $250 million cap, 250 employees, $5 million cap in training, sales tax exemptions for, let's say, a $250 million. If it were in Wichita, it'd be 7.5%. Can you give me an estimate how much one recipient might receive?
So on the back of the testimony on that return on investment study, that's a kind of a good walkthrough of 10 years associated with what some of those assumptions would be through there. As far as a dollar amount, you can equate through the 10-year period of the total number of incentives that are provided based off of the repayment schedule that's within. That will provide you a good estimate there. If you're looking for just a solid number, we can get that information for you as a potential.
No, I just want an estimate for one recipient based on those qualifications.
There's a variety of factors that go into play into that. So I don't have that information for you today, but we can certainly get that.
Okay, and so the Department of Commerce will submit a fiscal note through the Department of Budget before we work this bill?
Yeah, if it's available, we can definitely do that.
Okay, because it's been a month. I just have 3 questions. My second question's on page 3 of the bill. It says new employee. It's how it's defined. And it says a new employee is a newly employed in Kansas, and here's the kicker, by the qualified company. And that's traditionally or typically how we've done it. The problem with that is that we are seeing in Kansas a greater migration rate than those that are moving into Kansas. In the last, since 2000, we've seen 200,000 residents net leaving the state of Kansas. And so what this means is that the new employees are going to be shifting. They're going to be shifting from one employer, let's say in Wichita or Kansas City or another location, to this employer who's able to provide a higher wage because their incentives are significantly more than, let's say, another employer that may have only received HPIP or PEAK or maybe a local incentive. So I wanted to know your thoughts on the definition and perhaps excluding shifting. So it would have to be a new Kansas. So it could be a Kansas graduate that didn't have previously a full-time job in Kansas.
Sure. So from our perspective, and you know, we get asked this question quite a bit whenever we speak publicly around this migration out of Kansas. And what I like to typically say is the narrative associated with that is around a few factors. In Kansas, there is an unemployment rate of about 3.1%, right around there, which tells you that there are not enough high-paying jobs to support wage growth. So we have net migration out of Kansas to potential employers that actually employ these people. So the shift is we have a surplus of talent, not enough new jobs to actually support that. To limit the migration of somebody from one business to another would be detrimental, in my opinion, of the program, but also of it really hurts that individual Kansan and that workforce and that ability.
I would agree. It's detrimental to the smaller businesses that are losing employees. And our constituents and those smaller businesses will be cannibalized. Every time we insert something into the market, then there is a consequence. My last question is the layering effect. I am assuming that on page 7, all of these are just basically extensions of programs that we already have, whether it's HPIP or PEAK or KIT, and except that they're, for example, PEAK, it's a 95% maximum, but this one is 100%. So currently, right now, in the state of Kansas, if we had a business that had 250 jobs, the Department of Commerce could, right now, with the tools in our toolbox, award an HPIP, a PEAK, a KIT. Those things could be offered right now, in addition to local incentives, which could be a 10-year property abatement. Is that true?
So long as they meet the criteria of the programs, yes.
Yes. So the majority of what is offered in this bill, except for the fact that it's enhanced even more and it's refundable, and that's the key, it's refundable, is already available. And so then I guess my last question on that is, of all the potential active corporations that may be looking to relocate in Kansas or across the United States, how many of those just right out you would not be able to, they were just not interested because you didn't have enough incentives or?
Sure. So you heard from a previous testimony that we recently lost a rather large investment project to Ohio. That's a perfect example where that was a $5 billion project that went to the state of Ohio rather than Kansas. And that was primarily due to the fact that we did not have the incentive program such as this to be competitive with an Ohio in that way.
And just the last comment is, this is really, really difficult for many of us because it's a zero-sum game for the United States. When states wage war against other states to compete for the same number of jobs, it's a zero-sum game when employers are cannibalizing other employees and are able to pay them more because we gave them more. It's just a cycle that continues. And at the same moment, at the very same moment we're having this discussion, we're getting inundated by our constituents that don't have enough money to save for their 401k, that don't have a way to invest for their dreams and their hopes for a small business, and they can barely pay for their property tax. This is crippling. Thank you.
Can I respond to that? I would like to just, again, reference that Kansas First initiative. The intention of that is to really ensure that those businesses that are coming in do procure from those types of businesses in Kansas in that way. That is the intent of that.
Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Chair. We really need the jobs. I agree with you on that. But like if we go to a coffee or something and one of the constituents say, what would be the taxpayer's total investment in your dream? Could you give me any kind of a number so I could just lay something out for them?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear, Representative, I'm sorry.
So what I'm asking you is, when we go to like a coffee or see our constituents, what I'd like to know from you or somebody here, the taxpayers would like to know just about how much taxpayer dollars are they investing to get this to come to Wichita?
Sure. So each transaction is different, but I can give you numbers that we provided to Representative Williams on our traditional programs right now to kind of walk you through. So in fiscal year 24, we'll use that as an example. From all of our programs, there was just shy of $400 million, $396 million. In that year, there was $3.7 billion of capital investment into the state of Kansas. So, and that's pursuant, and that's not directly correlated as some of the programs are procured later on, but that should hopefully give you some good estimate in that way.
So just help me a little bit. So what would be your like a total number, just a single, so I'm not adding it up here. Any idea?
I'm sorry, one more time.
Okay, what would be the taxpayer's total investment, and just give me a number if you can, for this project to take off and run?
So in that ROI, if you're looking at the ROI in the back of my testimony there is on the gold line, there's an estimated anticipated annualized ROI, but there's also the total estimated AMK benefits that are there broken out by year. So in year one, which is 2028, 19.25 million, 2029, 10.93 million, and then it subsequently reduces from that point. So I think you can go across and you can get to that number from those 10 years.
Just show them your graph, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So right here.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Representative Penn online.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Undersecretary, for being here. A quick question. Were there other locations inside Kansas that were in competition for this particular benefit?
Yeah, the AMK bill is very much intended to be statewide. Although there are significant industry, as Wichita has really committed themselves as the aerospace capital of the world, this bill does not hold itself solely to aerospace projects. It's also manufacturing projects, which a recent manufacturing project just landed in DeSoto. But this bill is very much meant to be statewide and support some of the other economic engines that exist out in the other parts of the state of Kansas. Example, Topeka, there's an airport that exists in Topeka that's got a runway that's over 12,000 feet in length. The intention of this is to allow that airport to have some tools in the tool belt to slowly start to attract major scaled projects of this caliber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions? You made a statement that the bill is more targeted to bringing in new businesses than it is than our current businesses.
Then if I did make that statement, that is a misstep on my part. That is not the intention. The intention is to be kind of an equal opportunity sort of access to this bill. The requirement, however, for an existing company is to make the required qualifying activity as defined in the bill in order to qualify for the program.
Okay, so can you give us an example of how this could help a Bombardier, Textron,
Sure,
Spirit?
yeah, absolutely. So if Bombardier were to, let's say they have a project that they're working right now for a major headquarters or R&D for the U.S. for some of their defense work that is qualifying under the NAICS code qualifiers and that met the responsible 250 job creation component or the $250 million in CapEx, they could qualify for this.
Okay, did you say 250 jobs or 250 million in CapEx?
And 250 million.
Oh, it's and, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
correct.
good, all right. And the Kansas First grant that is for over $20 million of procurement in Kansas, is that each year?
Mr. Chairman, yes, the intention is each year up to a maximum of 3 awards per project associated with this. There is a maximum allocation from the Secretary's discretion of a maximum award amount of $5 million a year.
And then is there a limit to the number of projects that you can use this on?
There is not within the bill a limited number of projects. Our intention was to ensure that we had and could use this statewide, and we didn't want to kind of shoehorn ourselves into a limited number of opportunities.
All right, committee, any further questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks for being here. Mike O'Neill, Bombardier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike O'Neill representing Bombardier. I think I can be fairly brief because our company's been mentioned a couple of times. Obviously, Bombardier in Kansas is an existing company, but Bombardier has a number of other locations across the United States and in the world. And so one of the things that we like to see in this particular legislation is not only being able to benefit the existing site, but also incentivize Bombardier and the rest of the states to locate some of their projects to Kansas, because there's even some intercompany competition, if you will, in terms of where new projects are going to be placed. And so companies like Bombardier, who have a presence in a number of states and maybe a number of countries, are obviously going to look at the landscape of the states or jurisdictions where they're at in terms of making decisions. I can tell you that currently Bombardier is looking at about 3 projects that could conceivably fit here. And the way we read the bill, if you're talking about a facility, it also could be a complex of facilities. So you could have 3 different projects going on at the same time and maybe incentivize all those projects to come to one campus. Obviously, we're very proud of the tradition in Wichita as being the air capital of the world. We'd like to keep it that way. One of the things that I don't think has been mentioned is in looking at this particular legislation, and I've looked at a lot of economic development legislation over the years. There was a legislative post-audit done in November of '23 that looked at some of the existing economic development projects and made some recommendations. And one of the things they found beneficial was what the state of Washington had done with some of their economic development legislation. In looking at some of the recommendations there, it appears, at least on its face, that there was an extreme effort made in the drafting of this legislation to address some of the concerns that legislative post-audit had, and to also take into account some of the things that the state of Washington had recommended in terms of transparency, the clawbacks, the guardrails, and that sort of thing. Not that there couldn't be some improvement, but we were also impressed with the way this particular bill had been laid out that apparently cured some of the defects that were identified by legislative post-audit with some of the existing programs. Again, I'm local, so I can talk to committee members offline if you have additional questions that can't be answered today. But I do appreciate all the individuals that have come in from particularly the Wichita area in support of this. And we appreciate the efforts of Commerce in putting this initiative together. I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Committee, any questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Scott Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Scott Wagner. I'm here on behalf of the Kansas Association of Airports. I apologize for my funky eyewear. I don't have some antique aviator glasses on, and I'm not trying to make any kind of Oscar-level fashion statement today, but I had some eye surgery last week. I saw quite a few of you here yesterday for Aviation Day at the Capitol, so it's been a great couple days of talking about aviation in Kansas. The Kansas Association of Airports organized Aviation Day yesterday, and we hope to expand on that event in future years. And lots of folks from Wichita were at that event, and lots of employers had tables set up on the first floor yesterday, and I saw and talked to a few of you as well. The KA represents over 140 public use airports in Kansas, and we're very much in support of House Bill 2308, the shortened AIM-K program. You should have our written testimony as part of your packet, and I'm not going to go over all of those, but I would like to highlight a couple of the bullet points from this legislation. It expands aviation and aerospace investment. I wish this bill would have been in place a couple years ago. We've had a couple of the speakers mention Joby Aviation. They came to Kansas in the fall of 2023, I believe, scouting out airports. They came to Lawrence. I'm also the Lawrence, Kansas airport manager, looking for potential manufacturing sites. I was very optimistic of the package that we presented them. We have great universities leading the way in aerospace technology. We have extremely skilled workforce, and we have hardworking Kansans. They were very happy when we left, but ultimately they chose Dayton, Ohio. I would like to know why, but maybe if we had this legislation in place, they would have chose someplace in Kansas to site their manufacturing facility. However, with that being said, I think Joby and other companies like them are still interested in Kansas. They know what we have to offer. They know our workforce, and a couple folks have mentioned the Panasonic plant in DeSoto, where I live. That technology and that type of advanced aviation mobility companies, Joby manufactures an eVTOL aircraft. It's going to go into production later this year, I believe. Electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft are cutting edge technologies that we want to bring to Kansas, and I think this legislation would help do that. It also supports workforce development and training. Our employers at my airport, and I know at other member airports, they struggle to find skilled employees. In fact, Peasley Tech in Lawrence is going to be developing a high school curriculum for aviation study just here this fall, because our employers at my airport can't find the skilled laborers it takes to work on the aircraft we currently have in Kansas. In fact, some of you yesterday may have saw the Kansas Highway Patrol Airbus helicopter that landed on the south side of the Capitol and took off yesterday afternoon. That's a $7 million machine. You may ask, where do they get that serviced at? Where do they find the parts to keep that machine running? Very few companies support Airbus helicopters in this country. It's manufactured in Europe. we're lucky. We have a company at my airport called Eurotech that has these skilled technicians and airframe technicians and parts, certified parts to service Airbus helicopters. And so KHP does take that helicopter to Lawrence, Kansas to be serviced. And that particular company, I believe, would benefit from some of the workforce training incentives in this program. As part of some of the professional committees that I sit on as part of the American Association of Aviation Executives, AAAE, I sit on some advanced aircraft mobility committees, and SAF production has been a big part of that discussion. A lot of European countries are incorporating lots of sustainable fuel requirements, lots of emission requirements, as well as various airports in this country. We can sell a lot of SAF fuels here in Kansas if we can get those companies to build and locate here. We could sell as much SAF fuel as we could produce in Kansas ever. That is in demand worldwide right now, and it's very much needed in aviation. And finally, you know, airports are the hub of employment and activity and innovation in Kansas. If you haven't visited your airport in your constituency, I would encourage you to go visit, talk to your airport manager, and you'll see not only the companies that are at your airports, but the people that fly into your airports. They're visiting Kansas and visiting all those other companies. Thank you for your time today, and I would stand for any questions.
Okay, committee, are there any questions for Comfrey? All right, seeing none. All right, I'm not showing anyone else here to testify as a proponent. Is there anyone else here that wants to testify? Come on up, sir. Introduce yourself, please. Maybe I skipped over.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much for the time. My name is Tim Cowden. I'm CEO of the Kansas City Area Development Council, and I appreciate this process that I'm witnessing today. This is very important to the future of our ability to compete new companies, new jobs, and investment to our region. Let me tell you a little bit about my organization, the Kansas City Area Development Council. We've been around now for 50 years, and our job is to work shoulder to shoulder, both with the state of Kansas and the state of Missouri, because we're truly a regional organization representing 2.5 million people that comprise the Kansas City area. And we work very closely with the Department of Commerce, state of Kansas, and many communities across our region to attract investment in these jobs to our region. We are on a big-time roll right now. And as we think about the innovation that's occurring in the aerospace industry, and what's good for Wichita is good for Kansas, it's also good for Kansas City, because we are so linked together. So I think about the companies in my region, particularly in Johnson County. Garmin, over 4,000 employees there. Honeywell, many others. 85% of the aerospace employment in the Kansas City area is on the Kansas side of the state line. So it's very important, aerospace is. Also, advanced manufacturing in this world that we live in today, with so much reshoring and onshoring, and so much innovation that's occurring right now. The companies that I just mentioned, those that are represented here, and many, many others, we have to, and I appreciate what you're doing right now. You're considering innovating the tools that you have, because we have to be as competitive as possible to recruit these companies and these jobs and this investment to our region. It's incredibly important. Now, Representative Williams, you had mentioned the other states and some of the things that are occurring in terms of competition. I would love to be able to compete as a state, as a region, as a community, just on business climate, just on what we're all about, but we have to have these tools, and I appreciate the innovation that's occurring in this dialogue, in this process, to make Kansas, and by extension, the Kansas City region and Wichita and all the other communities as competitive as possible. I stand for any questions that you may have. I appreciate your time.
And sorry, seeing no questions. I apologize. We did have your testimony. We had it under written only for some reason. Okay, and so those of you that are conferees, make sure that you are clear on written versus oral when you submit your testimony so that we can do this right. Is there anyone else here that wants to testify as their proponent? Okay, seeing none. Are there anyone here that's neutral? Seeing none. Anyone here that is an opponent? Seeing none. Okay. We will close the hearing on HB 2308. Stand by. Okay, committee, since we're here and we have 15 minutes, we will go ahead and begin to work the child care bill. Charles has informed me whatever amendments have been requested are complete, and so, if we get through it, we get through it. If not, we will come back and finish it either tomorrow or Thursday if we have time. Okay. What's the bill? Charles, what's that bill number? All right, 2294. We're going to have discussion on 2294. Committee, is there any discussion, or actually we'll get a brief review of what the bill does.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. The committee will recall that this bill provides for a new regulatory system for child care in Kansas. It establishes a new Kansas Office for Early Childhood after sort of a one-year transition period. It also places into statute a number of regulations that govern daycare centers and child care and makes changes to those.
Committee, any question on what the bill does? Okay, seeing none. Open discussion on the bill. Any amendments? Representative Wassinger.
You want both amendments at the same time, or do you want?
Why don't you hand them out? Why don't you hand them both out, and we'll do them one at a time. Representative, you want to start explaining your first amendment?
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The First Amendment seeks to clarify that youth development programs and school-age programs operating in schools that comply with the applicable fire code are not subject to additional fire inspection. One of the things that this bill originally did was say that they had to go through fire inspections again, but when they're going, all these programs are operating in schools. Schools have already gone through fire inspection and do not need to be inspected a second time.
All right, they're still kind of handing these out, but yeah, I think that makes sense to me. Any questions or concerns with the amendment?
Representative Clayton.
Representative Clayton.
All right, so this is just stating that no more additional fire inspections above and beyond be added on? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, you can close on your amendment.
I close to amend the bill without the additional.
I'm sorry, I need a second on, need a second on the amendment.
There we go. There's a second. Over.
Representative Laura Williams, second on the amendment.
Okay.
All right, you can close.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I close.
All right, committee, you've heard the amendment. All in favor say yes. Aye. All against say no. Ayes have it. You want to explain your second amendment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The second amendment is to clarify that only children under the age of 18 may attend youth development programs. The language is deleted in sections 4 and 58, defining child to include children who are 18 years of age and have individualized planned programs. One of the problems with doing any of these child care programs for a child over the age of 18 is that the federal government will no longer reimburse you for anything that you're doing. So in order to keep this clean, we're taking out the children over the year who are 18 years of age and have an individual's planned program. And that's all that this changes, is to turn it down.
Okay, any discussion or questions for the bringer of the amendment? Representative Laura Williams.
I'm pretty sure, is this the amendment that addresses the Boys and Girls Club and just changes the age of 17 because they don't deal with 18 or older and changing the definition of child?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any other questions or concerns on the amendment? I need a second on the amendment. Representative Sutton. You can close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I close.
All right, you've heard the amendment, committee. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say no. Motion passes. Any further amendments? Vice Chair Turk.
I was just preparing for the inevitable motion, but.
Oh, it's coming.
Oh, yeah, I figured.
All right, seeing no further discussion on the bill, Vice Chair Turk.
All right, I move that we pass House Bill number 2294 out favorably, as amended.
Seconded by Representative Laura Williams. All right, any further discussion on the bill? Okay, all in favor of the motion to pass out favorably as amended, say aye. Aye. All against, say no. No. Motion passes. All right, I don't have anything else on the agenda today. We have 2 bill hearings tomorrow. I'm going to be late to committee. I'm testifying on another bill, so Vice Chair Turk will be running the meeting until I can get here. Good luck with him.
Good job, sir.
We're adjourned.
Turk.